The sound of the slap echoed through the five-star restaurant like a gunshot. 30 pairs of eyes watched as the young black waitress stumbled backward, her hand pressed to her burning cheek. The wealthy businessman sneered, "Know your place." But when security demanded her ID, his world shattered forever. Let me take you back to where this all started, on what seemed like an ordinary Friday night at Le Chateau, one of Manhattan's most exclusive French restaurants. The kind of place where a single dinner could cost more than most people's monthly rent, where crystal chandeliers cast golden light over mahogany tables, and where the wealthy came not just to eat, but to be seen. Destiny Williams adjusted her black uniform and checked her reflection in the polished surface of a serving tray. At 24, she carried herself with a quiet dignity that no amount of workplace humiliation had been able to break. Her dark eyes held a warmth that her customers rarely took the time to notice, too busy looking through her as if she were invisible. Tonight, like every other night for the past 6 months, she would smile politely, take orders with grace, and endure whatever condescension came her way. What none of them knew was that Destiny was living a carefully constructed lie. Every interaction, every moment of abuse, every dismissive glance was being captured by hidden cameras positioned throughout the restaurant. She wasn't just a waitress struggling to make ends meet. She was conducting one of the most ambitious social experiments ever attempted, and tonight it would reach its shocking conclusion. The restaurant's heavy oak doors swung open, and Harrison Blake strode in like he owned the place. At 45, Harrison possessed the kind of arrogance that only comes with generational wealth and a lifetime of never hearing the word no. His steel gray suit probably cost more than most cars, and his cold blue eyes swept the dining room with the practiced disdain of someone who viewed other people as either useful or invisible. Behind him walked his wife Patricia, a woman who had perfected the art of looking down on others while maintaining a facade of refined politeness. Her designer dress and perfectly styled hair spoke of countless hours and thousands of dollars spent maintaining an image that meant everything to her social circle. Harrison's jaw tightened when he spotted Destiny approaching their table. Over the past months, he had made it abundantly clear that he considered her presence an insult to the restaurant's standards. He had complained to management repeatedly, using thinly veiled racist language wrapped in concerns about professionalism and appropriate representation. "Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. Blake," Destiny said warmly, her voice steady despite knowing what was coming. "Your usual table is ready, but I'm afraid we're completely booked tonight, so I'll need to seat you at table 12 instead." Harrison's face flushed red. "Absolutely not. We specifically requested our regular table. Do you have any idea who I am? I've spent more money in this restaurant than you'll make in your entire worthless life." The words hit like physical blows, but Destiny maintained her composure. Around them, other diners began to take notice, conversations quieting as the tension became palpable. She had endured this treatment countless times before, but knowing it was being documented for a greater purpose didn't make the humiliation any easier to bear. "I understand your frustration, sir, but the Harrison party specifically requested Table 7 for their anniversary celebration. Perhaps I could speak with management about accommodating both parties." Destiny's voice remained professional, though those who looked closely could see her hands trembling slightly. Patricia leaned forward, her voice a whispered hiss that somehow carried across the quiet restaurant. "These people simply don't understand quality or proper service. They're not capable of it. It's not their fault, really. It's just their nature." The casual cruelty of the comment sent a ripple of uncomfortable murmurs through the nearby tables. Even in a restaurant accustomed to the entitled behavior of the wealthy, Patricia's words crossed a line that made other diners shift uncomfortably in their seats. Destiny felt something crack inside her chest, but she forced herself to remember why she was here. Every moment of this abuse was serving a purpose that would soon be revealed to the world. She took a deep breath and smiled, though it never reached her eyes. "I'll speak with Antoine immediately about your seating preferences," she said, referring to the restaurant's manager, who was actually much more than he appeared to be. As the evening progressed, Harrison seemed determined to make Destiny's night as miserable as possible. He sent back his perfectly prepared appetizer twice, claiming it was inedible. He deliberately knocked over his water glass, watching with satisfaction as Destiny hurried to clean up the mess while he made loud comments about clumsy staff and dropping standards. Other customers began to watch the harassment with growing discomfort. Several whispered among themselves, clearly disturbed by Harrison's behavior but unsure whether to intervene. The atmosphere in the restaurant grew increasingly tense as Harrison's abuse escalated. "This is exactly what's wrong with this country," Harrison announced loudly enough for half the restaurant to hear. "Standards have completely disappeared. People who have no business being in establishments like this are hired out of some misguided sense of political correctness, and the quality suffers for everyone." Destiny continued serving other tables with unwavering professionalism, but those paying attention could see the toll it was taking. Her movements had become more careful, more measured, as if she were walking through a minefield. Yet she never lost her composure, never responded with anything less than courtesy. The breaking point came during the main course. Patricia had ordered the restaurant's signature bouillabaisse, a complex dish that arrived beautifully presented with chunks of fresh seafood. She took several bites, praising the preparation loudly enough to ensure other diners heard her sophisticated commentary. Then, without warning, Patricia began to choke. It started as a small cough, but within seconds her face began turning red, then purple. She grabbed at her throat, her eyes wide with panic as she struggled desperately for air. The chunk of lobster had lodged in her windpipe and she was suffocating in front of 30 horrified witnesses. Harrison leaped to his feet, his earlier arrogance replaced by raw terror. "Help her! Somebody help her!" he screamed, but his panic made him useless. He grabbed Patricia's shoulders and shook her, which only made things worse. Destiny didn't hesitate. Years of training kicked in as she recognized the classic signs of choking. She moved with swift, confident precision, positioning herself behind Patricia's chair. "Sir, I need you to step back," she commanded, her voice carrying an authority that made Harrison instinctively obey. But as Destiny wrapped her arms around Patricia's torso to perform the Heimlich maneuver, Harrison's panic turned to rage. "Get your hands off my wife!" he roared, his fear manifesting as fury directed at the one person trying to help. "Don't you dare touch her! You have no right!" The restaurant fell into stunned silence as Harrison grabbed Destiny's arm, trying to pull her away from his choking wife. Other diners watched in horror as the man seemed more concerned with preventing a black woman from touching his wife than with saving her life. Destiny shook off his grip and continued her life-saving efforts, but Harrison's fury reached a breaking point. In a moment that would haunt him forever, he drew back his hand and struck Destiny across the face with a slap so hard it echoed through the silent restaurant like a thunderclap. The force of the blow sent Destiny stumbling backward, her cheek already beginning to swell. Gasps of shock rippled through the crowd of witnesses, but Destiny didn't stop. Despite being physically assaulted, despite the humiliation and pain, she stepped forward again. "I'm trying to save her life," she said quietly, her voice steady despite the tears beginning to form in her eyes. This time Harrison didn't interfere. Perhaps the desperate gasping sounds from his wife finally penetrated his rage, or perhaps the absolute silence from the other diners made him realize how far he had crossed the line. Destiny positioned herself correctly and delivered a series of precise upward thrusts just below Patricia's ribcage. On the fourth attempt, the lodged piece of lobster shot out of Patricia's throat and onto the floor. Patricia gasped, then began breathing in great shuddering gulps of air. The restaurant remained frozen in stunned silence. Harrison stared at his wife, who was alive because of the woman he had just assaulted. The other diners looked between Destiny, still holding her swollen cheek, and Harrison, who seemed to be processing what had just happened. But Harrison's capacity for self-reflection had limits. Instead of gratitude or remorse, his embarrassment transformed back into anger. The fact that this black waitress had saved his wife's life in front of all these witnesses somehow made him feel smaller, and he couldn't tolerate that feeling. "She assaulted my wife," he announced to the restaurant. "I want her arrested." She put her hands on Patricia without permission. The audacity of the statement sent shocked murmurs through the crowd. Several diners began speaking at once, their voices rising in disbelief, but Harrison wasn't finished. "Call the police! Call security! This woman physically assaulted us, and I won't stand for it." He pulled out his phone, his hands shaking with rage and adrenaline. Within minutes, restaurant security arrived, followed by 2 police officers who had been patrolling nearby. The lead officer, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, surveyed the scene with the practiced gaze of someone who had seen every possible human drama play out. "What seems to be the problem here?" he asked calmly. Harrison immediately launched into his version of events, painting himself and Patricia as victims of an unprovoked assault. He demanded that Destiny be arrested, his voice rising with each word as he seemed to convince himself of his own narrative. "Sir," the officer said, holding up a hand to stop Harrison's tirade, "I'm going to need to see identification from everyone involved and get statements from the witnesses." Destiny reached for her purse with trembling hands. She had known this moment would come eventually, but she hadn't expected it to happen quite like this. The officer waited patiently as she fumbled with her wallet. Harrison, still ranting about pressing charges, barely paid attention as Destiny handed over her ID. But the security guard who took it first froze as he read the information. His face went pale, then he straightened to attention as if he had just encountered a commanding officer. "Ma'am," the security guard said, his entire demeanor changing. I had no idea. I'm so sorry about this situation." The police officer, noticing the security guard's strange reaction, took the ID to examine it himself. His eyebrows shot up as he read, and he looked from the card to Destiny with new recognition. Harrison, frustrated by the delay, snatched the ID from the officer's hand before anyone could stop him. His angry expression faltered as he read the name, then his face went through a series of emotions: confusion, disbelief, and finally dawning horror. The ID read, "Dr. Destiny Williams, cardiac surgeon, Mount Sinai Hospital." The words seemed to hang in the air like a physical presence. Harrison stared at the ID, reading it over and over as if the words might change. Around them, the restaurant had gone completely silent, sensing that something monumental was happening. "You're—" Harrison's voice came out as a whisper. "You're a doctor?" Destiny straightened, and suddenly everyone in the restaurant could see the change in her posture. The subservient waitress disappeared, replaced by someone who carried herself with the quiet authority of a person who held life and death decisions in her hands every day. "I'm a cardiac surgeon," she said clearly. "I specialize in emergency procedures. What I just performed on your wife was a standard Heimlich maneuver that I've done hundreds of times. She was choking to death, and I saved her life." The restaurant erupted in whispers and gasps. Patricia, still recovering from her near-death experience, stared at Destiny with a mixture of gratitude and growing shame. But Destiny wasn't finished. She looked around the restaurant with new confidence, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. "For the past 6 months, I've been working here as part of a documentary project examining workplace discrimination and how people treat service workers. Everything that happened tonight, every insult, every moment of abuse has been recorded by hidden cameras throughout this restaurant." She gestured toward what appeared to be decorative elements throughout the dining room. "Those aren't just light fixtures and artwork. They're cameras that have been documenting how customers treat staff members they perceive as beneath them." Antoine, the supposed restaurant manager, stepped forward and removed a small device from his jacket. "I'm actually the director of this documentary. What you've all witnessed tonight is the culmination of 6 months of filming, documenting the daily reality of service workers who face discrimination." Harrison's face had gone from red to white to green. He looked around the restaurant, suddenly seeing the other customers in a new light. Several of them were now openly filming with their phones, capturing his reaction to the revelation. "This entire evening has been an experiment," Destiny continued, her voice strong and clear. "Dr. Patricia Blake is not an actress, neither are most of you, but some of the other customers and staff members are part of our research team. We wanted to document authentic interactions to show the world how service workers are really treated. She turned to face Harrison directly, and when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of every insult she had endured, not just tonight, but throughout the entire 6 months of filming. You spent months complaining about my presence in this restaurant. You made racist comments, demeaned my intelligence, and tonight, you physically assaulted me for trying to save your wife's life. All of that was recorded, but more importantly, it showed your true character when you thought there would be no consequences. Patricia, who had been silent throughout the revelation, finally spoke. Her voice was weak from her ordeal, but her words carried clearly through the quiet restaurant. "Harrison," she whispered, "she saved my life. This woman saved my life and you hit her." The reality of the situation seemed to crash down on Harrison all at once. His business empire, built on his reputation and connections, would crumble when this footage became public. His social standing, his marriage, his carefully constructed life, all of it was collapsing around him. "I didn't know," he said desperately. "I didn't know she was a doctor." "If I had known—" "That's exactly the point," Destiny interrupted. "It shouldn't matter what my job is. It shouldn't matter what my education level is. Every person deserves to be treated with basic human dignity and respect. The fact that you're only concerned now that you know my profession proves that you learned nothing from tonight." The police officer cleared his throat. "Dr. Williams, would you like to press charges for assault?" "We have multiple witnesses to what occurred." Destiny considered the question carefully. Around her, the restaurant waited in complete silence for her answer. Harrison stood frozen, knowing that his fate hung in the balance. "No," she said finally, "I won't press charges. But I want Mr. Blake to understand that his actions tonight will have consequences beyond the legal system. This footage will be part of our documentary, which will be shown to the world. People will see exactly who he is and how he treats others." Over the following weeks, the footage from that night spread across social media like wildfire. The documentary, titled "Hidden in Plain Sight," became a cultural phenomenon, sparking conversations about racism, classism, and the treatment of service workers throughout the country. Harrison's real estate empire faced massive boycotts and lost several major contracts as clients distanced themselves from the controversy. Patricia filed for divorce, citing not just the public embarrassment, but her realization of who her husband really was. In court documents, she described feeling ashamed that she had participated in the treatment of Destiny and other service workers over the years. But the story's impact went far beyond Harrison's personal downfall. Destiny used her newfound platform to establish the Dignity Foundation, which provided scholarships for students from underrepresented communities pursuing careers in medicine and other professional fields. The foundation's motto became, "Respect costs nothing, but its absence costs everything." 6 months after that fateful night, something unexpected happened. Harrison, humbled by the loss of his empire and his marriage, reached out to Destiny through her foundation. He had spent months in therapy, confronting the racism and entitlement that had shaped his worldview for decades. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He knew he didn't deserve it. Instead, he asked for the opportunity to volunteer at the free clinic that Destiny had established with the proceeds from the documentary. He wanted to spend his remaining years serving the communities he had once looked down upon. Destiny, demonstrating the same grace she had shown on that terrible night, gave him a chance. Not because he deserved it, but because she believed in the possibility of redemption for anyone willing to do the hard work of changing. The final footage of the documentary showed Harrison, dressed in simple clothes, working alongside Destiny to serve patients who couldn't afford health care anywhere else. The man who had once believed that money made him superior to others now spent his days proving his worth through service to those society had forgotten. As Destiny watched him carefully clean examination rooms and treat every patient with genuine respect, she reflected on the strange journey that had brought them to this point. The experiment had been designed to expose the ugliness of discrimination, but it had also revealed something else: the profound power of human dignity to transform both those who possess it and those who witness it. The story ended not with revenge or punishment, but with the radical idea that even the worst among us might be capable of change if they're willing to do the work and if someone is brave enough to show them the way.